Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm thrilled this week to have Emily Cook on with me. Emily, tell everybody who you are.
Hi, Todd. Thanks so much for having me today. So my name's Emily Cook. I am a three-time Olympian in the sport of freestyle aerial skiing. So that's the sport where you ski down a hill, you go up in the air, you do multiple flips, and ideally land on your feet and ski away. I did that sport I was 17 years on the U.S. national team. I got to go to 3 Olympic Games as an athlete. I got to go to 1 Olympic Games as a coach, this last one in Pyeongchang, Korea. And now I'm the athlete mentor manager for Classroom Champions.
So, Emily, I have so many questions for you today because I am so excited to talk about this. Because, when did you know that this kind of sport, this thrill ride of a thing that you do, was going to be something that was in your wheelhouse? Like, did you grow up going, I need to do something with my life that has this thrill seeking thing to it?
Well, so I was raised by my dad, which I think is really cool. My dad is one of my best friends. He's been awesome my entire life. My mom actually passed away when I was 15 months, which was so hard for my dad, of course, raising a toddler all of a sudden by himself. But he really quickly realized that he had this kid who had a ton of energy. So, when I was a toddler, he put me in as many sports as he could find. I got really bored by ballet, and I ended up going the direction of gymnastics. So I was a young gymnast. I loved flipping and being upside down. And my dad thought this was a really good way of preventing injury. So, when I was climbing up things and falling off them, I had learned how to fall that way.
Right.
And then he also loved skiing. So he started skiing when he was in college, not competitively, just for fun. And he loved skiing. And so, he says now selfishly that he had taught me how to ski so that he could have a ski buddy. And to this day, we're still skiing together. So, I just combined my 2 favorite sports of doing gymnastics and skiing into freestyle aerial skiing. And when I was 12 years old, I decided I wanted to go to the Olympics.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was,
Now,
I
did
was
you
pretty
decide
young
at
when I
12
first
years old you
decided.
wanted to go to the Olympics in skiing?
Yes. Yep. So by then I had discovered freestyle skiing, which I had just started doing flips on skis at 12, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I know. Kids are
I
doing
can't,
it way
like,
younger
this is
now, if
so
you can believe
scary
it.
for me to comprehend because I watch your sport when it's on TV and I'm like, I'm terrified watching it. And to know now that you're like doing flips on skis at 12 years old. I mean, I did gymnastics when a lot of people don't know, but I did gymnastics when I was a kid too. I was in some competitive gymnastics and I had no fear on the floor. I had no fear on the rings. I did the rings as well. But to me, this is a totally different kind of thing. Like, how do you even practice?
Okay, well, the coolest thing is that you practice into a pool. So I don't know how many of you guys have seen this, but basically, we built an entire ramp out of steel, pretty much, and we put plastic on top of it so that you can ski down it in the summer.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a big jump on the end that's shaped exactly like the jump that you use in the winter. And you go off that jump, you do your flips, and you land in a pool with all of your ski equipment. And then you swim to the side and you grab your skis and you walk up the stairs and you do it again. So that's how we always trained in the summer. And then, of course, we train a lot in trampoline. We use a spotting belt. So if you're learning a new skill, there's a regular spotting belt and then a bungee spotting belt. So imagine being on bungee cords and jumping
Right.
up and down on the trampoline. How fun is that? So you do a lot of that. And then you try it in the pool for the first time, where if you land on your head, it probably hurts. It still hurts, but a little bit less than doing so on snow.
I mean, it sounds like a circus performer almost, like practicing all these things. So, thinking about this event, what is one of the scariest kind of tricks that you've ever had to practice for?
Well, so my big trick, the one that I competed the most regularly, I'll throw out a name here and then I'll explain it. We called it full double full or double full full. It's 2 different variations of triple twisting double backflip. So that was kind of my bread and butter. That's what I did on a regular basis. And then I had ready to go, if I needed it, a quad twisting double backflip.
Oh my!
I know.
Like, I'm so impressed, Emily. I can't even tell you. And so, I want to backtrack again. So you're 12. You're doing some tricks already. You've got Olympics in your dream wish. So how did that translate to you actually making the Olympic team?
Yeah, there were a lot of years in between there for sure. So, I mean, I had this dream goal, right? The big long-term goal. And that was the thing that I would put, I'd put pictures on my bathroom mirror so that when I woke up, that's what I saw. And that was what would inspire me to get there. But, then along the way, there's obviously all sorts of obstacles. So you really just have to rely on your plans. You have this big long-term 10 years away goal. And then I had some really good people around me that helped support me to learn how to reach goals, how to set goals, how to plan around them, how to, reassess if things didn't go the way I wanted to. So actually what happened is I qualified for my first Olympic team in 2002. So a long time ago. 2002, the Olympic Games were at home in Salt Lake City. I had moved at that point from Boston to Salt Lake City. And the Olympic Games were in our backyard,
Right.
and I won our Olympic trial. I was 22 years old. It was my first huge event. There were 20,000 people in the crowd, and it was the most exciting moment of my life to date, right? So I qualified for the Olympic Games, and then what ended up happening is, once you qualify for the games, you obviously have to keep going on your training and your competitions. And I went to the next competition, and I ended up landing on the flat part of the hill instead of the steep part of the hill, and I broke both of my feet with 17 days to go before the opening ceremony.
Wow.
I know. So, I went from this moment where all of my dreams had materialized. Everything, my dream, my 10-year ago, 12-year-old self dream had just come true. And instead, I was going to go home to Salt Lake City and have surgery and watch the opening ceremonies and the games from a wheelchair, which was not what I had planned. So,
when I think about that, so you qualify for the team, but that happens right before, you said 12 days before y'all were going. When something like that happens, do they extend like an invite for you to attend, or because you had to have surgery and stuff like that wasn't even a possibility?
Well, I mean, there's kind of two choices in that. It had happened early enough that I was able to give my spot away. And I actually ended up being able to give my spot to one of my very best friends. And so I got to call him up and tell him, this happened. I'm not going to get to go, and you get to go in my place. And it was a cool experience. It wasn't how I wanted the Olympic Games to go, obviously, but I got to participate in the Olympic Games in a different way. My dad had already obviously bought tickets to all of the events. So I was kind of on like an every other day schedule because I had just had this big surgery, and, I was pretty sore, and it was challenging to get around, and, just post-op, but I got to go and I got to watch my teammate compete, and, he had a great Olympic Games as well. He didn't medal in that one, but another one of my teammates did, which was awesome. And this teammate, was someone who I had known since he was 9 years old. I was 12 when I had first set that goal. And it was really cool to be able to experience the Olympic Games in a different way that I wanted to, but with my teammates, with their support. So I watched, I cheered them on. I learned so much at those Olympic Games that I was able to bring forward into, my drive to come back from this injury. And it took 3 years to get back to jumping. Three full seasons. I know, crazy.
So this injury happens. It happens right before the games that you had qualified for. Was there ever a moment within that time period where you were like, where your dream just feels so crushed that you can't even think ahead to dreaming again for that to happen?
There were some challenging moments for sure. I'm not going to lie. I got into the sport because I loved jumping. I loved flipping. I loved skiing, all of these cool things. And then all of a sudden my training was going to physical therapy and, trying to get weight bearing again on one of my legs, never mind both of them. And it was a really hard process. So getting back to walking, getting back to working out, getting back to skiing, and then eventually getting back to jumping and then jumping on snow. And then with that came a lot of fear, to be honest, as well. So there's a couple of things that I kept in mind along the way. Obviously, just surrounding myself with really good people was one of them. So finding, the teammates that I knew really supported me. Thankfully, I had some awesome coaches that helped me out as well. And, just keeping it in perspective, having that inspiration, that big dream of walking into the opening ceremonies again, but remembering what I needed to do every day was really important. So, I mean, I still do that. I've got my daily journal right here. And, of course there's the big dream, the big goals, stuff like that. But then, what do I need to do weekly? What do I need to do every day are really the things that I've taken from skiing that got me back to being able to actually go to the Olympic Games and experience walking into the opening ceremonies that still come into play today.
So what was the first Olympic Games that you got to compete in?
I got to compete in Torino, Italy, in 2006. And honestly, when people ask me what my favorite Olympic memory is, it's 100% walking into the opening ceremonies in 2006 with my teammates.
I was going to ask that because, I always wonder, when you see it on TV as a spectator, it's so grand and majestic and so like overwhelming, even for me, to think of all of those people from all of those places and walks of life entering the same building at the same time. And so is that one of those moments where you can clearly remember it, or was it out of body where you're like, I had to have photo and video to remember what happened?
I mean, it felt out of body for sure. I remember like sprinting into the stadium. I don't know why. I don't know why all of a sudden it was like we were all running, but everyone was just running into the stadium. And you just hear this roar, even not being at home, being in Italy, it's still, your team walks into the stadium and you just hear this absolute roar of the crowd. And it's the culmination of so many years. It was 10 years to get to the 2002 games, and then another 4, 3 of which were filled with physical therapy and, getting back to all that stuff. So it was 14 years of trying to get there. And realizing that moment was so cool. And actually, I just noticed that behind my head are some pictures from the 2006 games. So for sure, it was something, I know, right? It was something that I cherish, memories that I cherish. And so many of my family members and close friends were able to go to 2002 as well, which was really cool to have that support. But to 2006 and to go to Italy and be in this beautiful Italian mountain town, it was so much fun.
Well, so my thing is then, so when you go to compete, what is the most nerve-wracking part? Like, is it waiting for your day? Is it on your day? Is when you're at the top, when you're doing your flip? Like, what to you is the most nerve-wracking?
That's a good question. When I'm in the gate, it's not nerve-wracking. I'm just totally focused on the task at hand. It's all really technical thought. If anything, it's, some deep breaths, some good music to get myself in the right mindset. But when I'm in the gate, it's just 100% technical. I'm thinking about, what technically I need to do to hit the right takeoff, where my left arm needs to go in order to spin perfectly. So it's just really technical thoughts.
Yeah.
I'd say, I mean, as an athlete, before I get in the gate, I was always scared. There was always fear, right? Because it's a crazy, scary sport. And, the process of controlling that fear was very routine for me. So I had a really dialed in routine. The night before there was a little anxiety thinking about, what's to come, but it was more excitement than anxiety, if that makes sense. But, when I talk to kids and such about fear and about managing fear, I don't really think that there's such thing in my sport as fearlessness. It's 100% courage and bravery that you're using, if anything, but mostly just relying on preparation. So
awesome. Well, I know your video popped out right now, but it's been doing that on BeLive. So we're just going to keep talking because I can still hear you. And earlier, my last guest, their video popped back in. So we'll hope it pops back in. But Emily, I wonder, as an athlete, you especially, you're in a solo sport. And so you're doing these flips by yourself. And obviously, there's going to be many times that you fall, that you don't make the cut, that you don't get the place you were getting. How do you not let those moments like just completely demoralize you where you can't continue on?
Yeah, you can hear me still, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. How do you let those moments, for sure, just like I talked about earlier, making sure that you have really good people around you to talk to when those things happen, because there are going to be challenges, whether you are an athlete or a student or In your job, there's obviously always going to be challenges. So one of the most important things to me has always been to just surround myself with people that I trust, that I can have these conversations with is number one. And then also just being willing to shift your plan, right? Having a really good plan, but if something gets in the way, like a big injury, shifting what it is you need to do every day. Training didn't look like training when I was going to physical therapy every day, but it was still training. It was just a different version. And I had the chance to go into coaching afterwards and having those conversations with my athletes of, okay, I know that, this was the plan and this happened and it got in the way, but what can we do now? What's important now is always just a really important question to ask is, what can I do now to get one step closer to that dream that you have, whether it's going to the Olympic Games, whether it's getting on the podium, whether it's, being successful at work or in school, reassessing the plan and making sure it's written down and shared with important people in your life is imperative to me.
I love that. Well, Emily, now you are no longer competing, but you now get to work for an organization that I absolutely love called Classroom Champions. So how did you get connected with Classroom Champions?
I love Classroom Champions. So I was an athlete mentor with Classroom Champions. And so what that means is that I got the chance as an athlete to be coached around the messages that I wanted to send to kids. So, Classroom Champions works in social emotional learning. So the things that athletes know work, right? So perseverance and managing big emotions and setting goals and being an active part of your community. All of those things are so important to success in general. And so as an athlete, I was so thankful to get the chance to work with different classrooms, work with different schools, and get my message across to these kids. When you're an athlete, it's so easy to get really focused on yourself and your own things. And to me, I think being a part of Classroom Champions as an athlete not only made me a better athlete, but a more well-rounded human being. And it gave me some purpose in my life, right? Doing flips on skis is really cool, but when it comes down to it, I don't know what the real difference in the world it doesn't make. I'm not really sure, but it still is really fun and inspiring to a lot of people. But for me, I loved the idea of getting those messages across. It was super important.
I love that. And now you work for them.
Yeah.
And so you got to go from being an athlete to being an athlete mentor in the program. And now you get to help bring in other athletes and do all kinds of stuff. And so where did that transition happen?
Well, so I was coaching the team. I loved coaching the team. I got the chance to coach the Olympic team, which was amazing in Pyeongchang, Korea. And then when I was done with that, I kind of decided that I wasn't really interested in traveling for 8 months out of the year anymore. So, I still wanted to work with athletes. I still wanted to contribute to athletes. And, when I started school way back when, I started in elementary education, and education is so important to me. So the chance to be able to make an impact in education with kids and also still work with athletes is the coolest thing ever. So I connected with Steve Messler, who is our fearless leader. And, we found that this was going to be a really good fit, and I joined the team in November. So I love, love, love that I get to work with so many amazing athletes. We have incredible professional athletes. We have Olympians and Paralympians. We have college athletes, and it is such a blast. I love it.
Well, and I think what I love about you being on the team is you bring such a fun energy and uplifting mood all the time that anytime I get to collaborate with you, I'm like, I'll say yes because I know Emily's involved, and Emily's always fun to work with. And so, when you look back at your life, Emily, and you reflect on all the things you've been through, the successes, the failures, the trials, the wonderful moments, what is one that you really reflect on and say that was really instrumental into creating the woman we see today?
Honestly, it was that injury, which at the time I would never, ever, ever have wanted that to happen. But looking back, what I learned throughout that process has been so vital to everything. I mean, to the relationships that I have, to the, any successes that I've had. I think that if I hadn't been injured in 2002, I probably would have competed that year, potentially have retired, and, definitely would not have been where I am today, working with athletes in this amazing field and making such an incredible difference with them. So I would say that, that setback, which at the time felt like the most devastating thing in the world, getting hurt going into the Olympic Games, was absolutely something that just made the most difference for me.
Well, I think it's one of those reminders of, in the moment, the kind of things are so frustrating and so heartbreaking. But oftentimes later down the road, you can look back and you can say, thank goodness that happened, because I am in the place I am today because of it. And so, Emily, one way that I always love to end all of these conversations is, I believe as people, there are things we hold really close to our hearts and our beliefs and who we are. And so for everybody listening or watching today, if there was one thing you wish they walked away from this conversation with, what would your one thing be?
One thing, I think it's especially relevant right now, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's just surround yourself with the good people.
Yeah.
We're all in our houses right now, and life is challenging. Life is really challenging, and sometimes, especially if you're working at home and you're on Zoom calls all day or whatever version of that you have going on in your life, at the end of the day, it's hard to reach out and connect. If you're tired or you're feeling like maybe you just want to sit on the couch and not do that. For me, the most important thing has been to make the effort to reach out and stay connected with the people that I love and the people that I know make me better. And that I think is number one thing, both as an athlete, made a difference and made a difference for me today. So reach out, keep talking to people, stay connected. And I think all of us, no matter what our age, it's so important to have something that we're consistently striving for and sharing that with the people around us, so allow them to help us succeed, because then we all succeed.
I love that. And Emily, thank you so much for agreeing to come on Tell Your Story today. You know that I love you and the work you do, and I was so excited when you said yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you so much for joining us at Classroom Champions. We've been doing our Classroom Champions lives, and we love having you on with us.
I have loved it too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We love what you do as well, and happy to be here with you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get it, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Emily has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.